Hello and welcome to today's video. Today, I want to share with you the 5 most common mistakes I see people making when they are trying to heal. Now, as with most of my videos, I've made all of these mistakes myself. So I'm sharing not only from personal experience, but from now having had the opportunity to work with over 1,000 people and being connected to probably closer to 10,000 people on different social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. I get emails all the time, so I hear about these mistakes. And I'm kind of uniquely blessed in the fact that I can collect all of this information. And I thought it'd be really helpful to share it with you so that we can try and prevent you from making these very common mistakes. So the first 2 mistakes I have on this list, I'll be honest, they're a bit boring and they're a bit generic, but they are happening all the time. Every single person makes them, so I have to share them with you. But 3, 4, and 5, these are really interesting, and there's a lot more detail I can get into these. So we're going to kind of skim through 1 and 2 really quickly, and then we're going to get to the first one is they build their protocol in a way that makes it very hard for them to understand cause and effect. So what I mean by this is, a lot of the time, somebody will go to work with a practitioner, a naturopath, a functional doctor, somebody, and they'll give them like 20 supplements. They'll give them like a huge list of things, and they start all of them at exactly the same time. And the thing is, if you do this, you have no idea what is making you feel better and what is making you feel worse. We really have to approach healing through this idea that we're kind of conducting a scientific experiment on ourselves. We need to be able to control variables and we need to be able to distinguish cause and effect. Because if you add 5 supplements and you feel better in some ways and worse in others, we have no idea why. We have no idea what is causing what thing to happen. So it's really important that when you do add something, we do it in a way where you can understand how it's influencing your body, your health, your symptoms. Because if you don't, then the data that you collect is useless. It doesn't help you refine your healing program. And the second most common mistake is following the hype. So this is like, I know what it's like. I've been there, again, I said at the beginning, I've made all of these mistakes myself. This is going and watching a YouTube video. Maybe you even watch one of my YouTube videos and I'm like, oh, creatine is great, or Shilajit is amazing, or probiotics are fantastic. And you're like, oh, this guy said it, and these other people said it as well. And then maybe you go read an Instagram post, or you see, the other day I saw an ad on Instagram for this candida cleanse. And it's like, there's no investigation into like, do you actually have candida? It's like, you look at your tongue and it's white. It's definitely candida. There's a million things that can cause a white tongue. It doesn't necessarily mean it's candida. And they're just selling this extremely high potency antimicrobial. And you see it's like a viral ad and you're like, okay, I'm going to jump on this hype, and you do it. That's not where you find healing. You're not going to find healing in hype. That's just not where it is. And a lot of these people selling these products or doing this type of marketing, they understand how the human brain works. They understand psychology. They want you to feel this like FOMO, this fear of missing out. They want to try to make the sale, they're trying to push you to buy the product. Or you'll have very innocently somebody posting in a group about how they took one supplement and it changed their life. And that's great because it's helped them, but it's because it addressed a core dysfunction that they were experiencing. You need to identify what your core dysfunctions are so you can target your approach. Because I have a lot of clients, and sometimes I'll have one that takes like betaine HCl and some digestive support, and everything gets better. SIBO improves, the detox improves, the bowel movements improve, their energy, the mental health, they all improves. But this is because they had a specific GI dysfunction that is then corrected with an appropriate supplement. And that has this miraculous response. If you have somebody that has enough stomach acid and then you give them betaine HCl, nothing happens. And then that person's thinking, where was all the hype? Why were people saying that this supplement was going to be amazing? The thing is, they weren't lying. It was amazing for them, because they had a core dysfunction that supplement addressed. So instead of just jumping on the next supplement, the next trend, the next hype, investigate, connect to your body, listen to your symptoms. If you can understand what your body is trying to communicate to you with the symptoms that you're currently experiencing, it's going to help you figure out what do you need to do to address this dysfunction, to correct it into function, and consequently healing in the long run. So the third most common mistake that people make when they are healing is detoxing in the wrong order. And I can 100% understand why people do this, because detox is such a broad term, and honestly, it's kind of complicated. It's a little bit tricky to understand. You'll search, maybe you go on ChatGPT and you'll ask it a prompt, or you go on YouTube and you watch a video and they're like, phase 2 liver detoxification pathways, glutathione conjugation, bile flow, stagnant lymph, and mucosal congestion. They say, oh, we've got 10 kilograms of poo that's just stuck in your colon, and it's crystallizing and forming this mucoid plaque. And it's like, and I understand, I get it. I understand why people get it wrong, because there's so much info out there, and some of these things are so sensational. You have 15 kilograms of parasites infesting your colon. do this colon cleanse. You know, I get it. I get it. Like, I've heard all these things. And again, like I said, I've made all of these mistakes. I've put some of the craziest things up my ass to try to cleanse, you know? I've done vitamin C enemas. I've done so many different things. I've taken MMS, Miracle Mineral Solution, which is basically like, it's chlorine dioxide. I've taken gum spirits of turpentine. I have done a whole bunch of crazy stuff. So again, speaking from experience, but if you can understand how the body actually detoxes, and if you can support your body in the correct way, you can heal. Detox is really important. A lot of illnesses and a lot of diseases have this kind of common theme of chronic toxicity in the body. So detox is important. And in a way, the hype behind it is really important because it's true, but the way that you go about it is not these sensational ways. Detox is actually something the body is doing all of the time. You're detoxing now and now and now. Like, you're doing it all of the time. The thing that most people are missing are the correct order and what to do it. And when you're looking at the different stages, how do you support the body most effectively? I'm not going to break down the whole detoxification process, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the first 3 steps so that you're going to have some idea of where to start. And I'm going to give these to you in the correct order so that you're going to be able to implement these things in a way where this detox actually makes you feel better. Because again, a lot of people will say, oh, I'm detoxing, like I feel like shit, I'm herxing, I've got this rash, like I'm bloated. You're not supposed to feel bad when you're detoxing. This means that you are not doing it correctly. You are pushing too far. You're pushing your body out of its optimal zone of function. Every time you do this, you actually slow yourself down. I know this goes against what you've been told. You've been taught, if I'm killing things, then I'm suffering and that's good because it means I'm healing. And if I'm detoxing right, then my liver should feel horrible and I should feel nauseous. And this is not true. If you're detoxing optimally, you should feel better. The dosage is the key, and we need to look at the order in which we're doing things. So where do we start? First step, we have to make sure your bowels are moving regularly. At an absolute minimum, 1 bowel movement every 3 days is absolutely required. If you cannot have a bowel movement at least once every 3 days, you need to implement some sort of intervention to get your bowels moving. This is going to look different for everyone depending on their context, their situation, what works for them. This could be enemas. This could be the use of certain like laxative medications or even more natural laxative options. So these are sort of like osmotic laxatives like magnesium citrate, this sort of thing. An absolute minimum, a bowel movement every 3 days is required. If you cannot move your bowels once every 3 days, every other thing that you do to try to detox, all of the detox teas that you take, the juicing, the fasting, doing different types of bioresonance detox protocols, taking binders, all these other things, they're not going to help. They're just simply not going to help because you have a bottleneck. All of these toxins that all of these other modalities can be helpful and useful to help mobilize, they're stuck. They cannot leave the body. The majority of toxins leave through the bowel. And if your bowels aren't moving, none of these other detox things are going to work. Ideally, we want to get you to the point where you're having 1 bowel movement every single day. That's roughly the goal. If it's more than that, if it's 2 or 3 bowel movements a day, there will be some people that say you have to have 3 bowel movements a day. And if you're not having 3 a day, you're not detoxing. That's not true. 1 a day is sufficient. It's totally fine. But if you aren't having that 1 a day, your detox is impaired. And if you aren't having at least 1 every 3 days, that needs to be your number 1 therapeutic intervention. You need to get the bowels moving. Again, speaking from experience, I was severely constipated. I would only have a bowel movement once every 7 days, once every 10 days. And is it a surprise that this developed into histamine intolerance, mast cell activation syndrome, chronic hemorrhoids and bloody stools, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia? Is that a surprise? No, because my body couldn't remove toxicity. So have to get the bowels moving, and at least once every 3 days at a minimum, ideally once a day. The next step from there is we want to look at the microbiome and the digestive function, because again, all of these toxins, so we've got 4 primary detoxification pathways. We've got bile, which exits into the digestive system and comes out in the stool. We have urine, we have sweat, and we have the breath that we exhale. 80% of the toxins are going to be metabolized by your liver and are being removed through the bile, through your digestive system. 80%. This is the Pareto distribution in action. 20% of your effort is going to give you 80% of your outcome. All of these other detox things that you do that make you sweat, that make you breathe more, that make you detox through your urine, this is the small minority. The huge thing that we want to be focusing on is the bile. This is where the majority of your toxins are going to be leaving. And the thing is, if your microbiome or if your digestive system is not functioning correctly, when your body is trying to move these toxins from the liver, from this bile where it's been packaged up, to be excreted in the stool, we can have enterohepatic reabsorption, which is where we are reabsorbing a lot of these toxins. They're coming from the digestive system back into the body. And at this stage, the liver is basically running on a treadmill. It's doing all of this work to do detoxification. And then your body is just putting all of this metabolic energy, all of these detox resources to just spin in a circle, and you're making no progress. So again, this is why working on your gut is so important. And one of the most important things here is the microflora. The reason for this is your microflora very often can become the biggest source of toxicity. If you're eating food that you cannot digest, if you have SIBO, if you have things like Clostridia or candida, these organisms can produce toxic compounds like endotoxin, like acetaldehyde, that are essentially poisonous to your body. They're very damaging to your body. And even if we have environmental exposures like, I don't know, maybe you believe in chemtrails. I do. Maybe you're getting some heavy metals from that. Maybe it's the fluoride in the tap water. You know, maybe you don't drink it, but you shower in it, or you have to wash your hands when you're out in public. You know, you get exposed. There are toxins in the environment. This is true. But there's a lot that you can do to minimize these things as much as possible. But if your own digestive system has now become this huge source of pollution, this source of toxicity for you, not only is it poisoning you from the inside out, but it's also an essential part of your detox mechanisms. So if it's poisoning you, it's also not helping detox you. So it's so important. It's foundational that we get the microbiome working for us instead of against us. So the first thing is make sure you're digesting your food correctly. We need to make sure you're eating a diet that you're actually able to digest and absorb. We can provide digestive supports, things like betaine HCl, digestive enzymes, ox bile, other strategies that we could try, things like food combining. There are a million different ways to do it, but the reason that these things work is the end goal is that we are digesting the food correct. This provides the body with nourishment. This reduces the overall toxic burden from undigested food and food feeding pathogenic organisms, dysbiotic organisms. And it provides this mechanism, this environment that we need to be able to remove these toxins that are being excreted from the bile. So digest the food correctly. We also want to work on the microbiome. The next point that I'm coming to, we're not here quite yet. We will come here in a minute, is going to be talking about killing too soon. So we're not quite there yet. I've still got a couple more things to finish up on this one. But when I talk about fix the gut, heal the microbiome, the first thing a lot of people will do is they'll jump into killing. What we want to do here is actually we want to feed, we want to nourish, we want to restore. Instead of trying to nuke it, we want to look at how can we address what is missing. If you're missing these core species in your microbiome, so the four that I most commonly see creating a big problem for a lot of people is lactobacillus, bifidobacterium, Faecalibacteria prausnitzii, and Akkermansia muciniphila. If you have low lacto and bifido, these full families, so this is all of these different organisms. This is longum, infantis, plantarum, all of these different lacto and bifido organisms, and these Akkermansia and Faecalibacteria. These organisms are really important for creating a good terrain in the gut, and they only take a very small portion. We're talking like normally like 5 to 10% of the microbiome. So it's a relatively small portion, but they have a significant influence on the rest of the composition of the microflora. And if these organisms are missing, the chance of having parasites or candida or a bunch of other stuff that's not really optimal increases significantly. So before we kill anything, we want to make sure we've restored these four. We want these four to be in here. So the best way you can do that, again, depends on the individual. You could do a microbiome test. I actually have a step-by-step guide that walks you through how to introduce probiotics, including these lactobacillus and bifidobacterium probiotics, and then also how we feed the Akkermansia and the Faecalibacteria, and it walks you through it in a step-by-step process. I will put that link magically with the power of the post-production somewhere either on the screen or in the description down somewhere below. It's a really good video. I really like it. It's a literally step-by-step guide. It is foolproof. It is amazing. One of my favorite videos, step-by-step guide, master probiotics. It's really, really good. And then finally on this point is bile flow. We need to make that bile flow. If your bile isn't flowing, you can do all of the phase 2 liver detox you like. You could do all the saunas that you want. You can sweat as much as you like. You can do all these things. If your bile doesn't move, the toxins are staying stuck. So we need to get your bile moving. The general best thing that you can do for this is to just eat fat in your diet. That is the most physiologically appropriate way to do this. One of the primary functions of bile is to digest fat. So if we can get that stimulus by eating fat, that's the best way to do it. There are a lot of other ways you can do it as well. You can look at liver and gallbladder flushes. You could look at coffee enemas. Like I said, these are all fancy things. Let's not get distracted with the fancy things. Let's do the basics. You're supposed to eat fat. That's why you have a gallbladder. So let's eat fat. And if you're fat intolerant or you have fat malabsorption or you have any of these types of issues, the dosage is the key for you. You have to start small and build it up. You have to increase it very gradually over time. but it's really important that you understand, if your bile does not move, you cannot detox. It is not possible. You're working in like a 20% threshold of your total detox capacity because the liver pathway, the bile and the bowel movements are not doing anything. You're putting all of this work on the skin, on the lungs through the exhalation and through the kidneys, through the urine. These are not the primary systems. And if all of these get overloaded as well, then your immune system's going to start as well. And hey, you've got muscle activation syndrome. Fantastic. Congratulations. That's one more thing to add to the list. So focus on getting the bile moving, the bowels moving, and correcting the microbiome. They are the most important things to get you started on detox. There are some later stages. We're not talking about that today because I don't want you to get distracted. I want you to do the right things in the right order. So do these things first. Next, as I already alluded to, the fourth most common mistake most people make is killing too soon or even killing too much. So the way that I like to use antimicrobials now is very mildly, very in more of an inhibitory fashion. And also it's the last thing. It's the absolute last thing that you do. How do I know this? Is I made this mistake myself. And making this mistake added years onto my healing journey. I ruined my microbiome. I already had a bad situation and I made it a million times worse. So don't make the mistake that I did. Microbiome interventions are not as simple as so my logic at the time was I have SIBO. Well, I have gas and bloating. Gas and bloating can only come from SIBO. It has to be a bacteria or a yeast or something that's producing it. So what am I going to do? I'm going to kill it. I'm going to kill the thing that's making me bloated. I'm going to kill the thing that's producing gas. That was not the right decision. This created much more damage to my microbiome. This made me go from being severely constipated at like one bowel movement every 3 or 4 days to literally a bowel movement every 10 days. This was because of doing this killing and taking antibiotics and antimicrobials. This took me from some like mild, like really mild histamine intolerance, like a little bit of itchy eyes, like that was basically it, to I literally became disabled. I was stuck in bed 23.5 hours a day. I was effectively rendered blind by my histamine muscle activation syndrome symptoms. I also developed chronic fatigue syndrome. So I literally had a full-time carer. I could just about survive with their support. That's what doing all the antimicrobials did. That's what happens if you do it too early. You do it wrong. Again, I'm very cautious with this because I did it the exact wrong way. And I'm hoping that I did it the wrong way so that I can save you the hassle, so that I can save you the pain and the time of making these mistakes yourself. It really fucked me up. It was really, really bad for me. It added a lot of pain and suffering, which I now see was completely unnecessary if I'd have known different, and a lot of time. And healing already takes long enough as it is. You don't need to make it harder and more complicated. So don't make the same mistake that I did. The only time that I would look at killing is you've already restored these 4 that I've mentioned. Your lactobacillus, bifidobacterium, akkermansia, and fecalibacteria. They are looking pretty good, or you've at least introduced interventions to support these and given them a little bit of time to work. Then if you do try to kill, start with something more gentle. So two options of more gentle things would be, well, actually, let me give you 3. One would be colostrum. I love colostrum because it does kill, but it's very gentle. It also has growth factors. It has immunoglobulins. It re-educates the immune system. So it's a very gentle kill. It also has some prebiotics to help feed the lacto and bifido and these beneficial organisms. Next would be something like lauric acid, monolaurin, caprylic acid, these sort of things. These, again, are much more gentle. You can find them in whole food forms. So basically, like, for example, coconut oil has caprylic acid. It's close to a whole food. Yeah, it is slightly refined because it's just the oil. But in this form, it has a mild antimicrobial effect. And I've seen that even just taking coconut oil is really effective if you have candida. And what we're trying to do here is we're trying to inhibit, we're discouraging the growth of these dysbiotic organisms so we can encourage the growth of our beneficial flora. And then finally, something like SF722. So this is undecilinic acid by thorn. This is an extract from castor bean oil. It's very selectively antimicrobial for dysbiotic pathogenic yeasts. It doesn't hurt your beneficial flora that much. So these are some much more gentle options. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, oh, he said these ones are okay. I'm going to just take them now. Please don't do that. Please do all the other things that I said first. Make sure that you're digesting your food correctly. Make sure that you have addressed any of these missing organisms that should be there that aren't. Do not just do this because I'm now giving you like a free pass that I'm saying this is okay. This is still the last stage thing that you do. This is still like right at the end. You have to do all the other things first. But if then you decide this is the right thing, these are some more gentle options. If you do need to use something that is more like a nuclear bomb, so like oil of oregano, or allicin, for example, or an actual antibiotic. These should be absolute last stage interventions. And I also just want to really emphasize that taking antibiotics and antimicrobials, they do have more of an appropriate application when you're looking at an acute infection. When you're looking at a chronic infection or a chronic dysbiosis, you have to be really careful. I would strongly discourage you from doing it without talking with someone or working with someone that has a lot of experience with doing this. And again, like, I know that this can maybe come off like I'm saying like, oh, you have to book a call with me. I'm here. You can book a call with me. I would love to work with you on this, but I really just want to save you the pain of all of the extra pain and suffering that I experienced as a consequence of kind of doing it the wrong way, and all of this extra time that it added to my healing journey. And if for a couple of €100, I can literally shave like 2 years off of your healing journey and all of the pain. And can you imagine what it's like to go from being like walking wounded with chronic health problems, but they're not that severe, to literally disabled? Like literally, like the government acknowledges you are disabled and they give you disability benefits. Can you imagine what that's actually like? That's what I'm trying to save you from. That's what I don't want you to have to go through. And if I can do that for like €200-300, I think that's a pretty good deal. And I also want to clarify, there are appropriate situations when this is the case. Literally yesterday, I built an antimicrobial parasite protocol for an individual, but we walked through all of these other steps first. We've covered all of these bases. And even then, with the approach, the application, it's on the milder, gentler side. I know if you went to a lot of other practitioners, they would be like, okay, you have to do 2 months of these extreme herbs. It's like, we're doing 2 weeks, like in a mild dose. And then we're going to see what happens, and we're going to retest, and we're going to take it from there. So please don't just destroy your microbiome. You don't garden by throwing napalm on the garden and then trying to grow everything on it. You go in and you work it. It's not just this nuclear bomb kind of option. Please just be careful, and don't make the same mistake I did. I really regret it. And finally, on this list, this is probably the most unsexy one. Actually, when I think about it, this video has been pretty boring. This is all, I'm literally taking all of these sexy things about healing, like all these detoxes and killing and all of this, like, whoa, all of the crazy stuff. And I'm saying like, don't do any of that. And I know how boring that sounds. I just want you to get the results. This is where the results are. I didn't invent healing, you know? I kind of stumbled on it by accident and trying to find it for myself. And all of these like sexy, adventurous things, they don't really work. They're not really that helpful. So I'm basically telling you not to do them. But finally on the list, we have the most unsexy thing of all, which is one of the most common things that people do is they neglect the emotional root cause. They don't do the nervous system work. They don't look into their trauma, and they don't work on this side of things. And for one, it's hard, it's hard to look at it. But two, it's also very difficult to understand. How can a physical health problem be caused by trauma or by an emotional root caused by my nervous system? I get it. It's a difficult thing to understand. Again, how do I know? I made the same mistake. I spent the first probably 2 or 3 years of my healing journey just working on the physical. And if I'd have worked on the emotional root cause from the start, again, I'd have probably saved a year or two. I would have made so much more progress. So let me try to explain how this works. So imagine your root cause or some of these significant things that have happened in your life. So imagine you had the mold exposure, or you got amalgams put in your teeth, or you had a course of antibiotics or lots of courses of antibiotics. Whatever it is, there's some kind of physical thing that you did that influenced your current health situation. And the thing is that behind this action was some sort of thought process and some sort of emotion. So I hear this all of the time. Very often, people will take some type of antibiotic, and this creates a huge health problem. And this is more common with like the fluoroquinolone drugs, for example, like ciprofloxacin, levofloxacin. And I always ask like, okay, well, what was your emotional state at the time? How were you feeling? Why did you decide to do this? And almost always people say, I was really scared. I was really terrified. I felt like this was my only option, so I took it. How can you not see the emotional root cause there? You took it from this place of fear because you couldn't contain fear, and you couldn't stay centered and confident and have trust and faith in the solution or the outcome that your body would provide for you. And sometimes you can take antibiotics and they are actually the appropriate option. Like if you have to have a surgery, like for example, I had a kidney stone. I had to have a kidney stone surgery. I had to take antibiotics because, well, it was a surgery. And yes, I was afraid, but I also felt this sense of confidence, this sense of, I know this is the right thing. And this was because I'd done a lot of this emotional work and I'd really connected with myself. And I understood that this was, in a way, a lesson for me. This was something that I had to go through as an experience so that I could learn, so that I could become a better person. And it was a part of my self-development journey. But I could feel all of that. That's not what most people say when they say they took antibiotics. They say, I was scared. I didn't think I had any other option. I felt like I had to. There is an aspect there of a lack of connection with the self, a lack of grounding, a lack of confidence in your own ability and your own perceptions. And these things come from trauma. These are symptoms or consequences of trauma. There will be something, you could trace it back. You don't actually need to. You don't need to be able to think. So a lot of people think trauma healing is like, you go back and you're like, oh yeah, I was 5 years old and my teacher at school said this one thing about me and now I have this belief about myself. You don't have, that's not how it works. The way that it works is things happened to you and they've created belief system that you have and the thought process that you have. So the way that you approached the life, the way that you approach the world, the way that you approach relationships is tainted by the experiences that you've had in the past. They have had an influence on your thought process, on your belief systems. And when they create a disconnection from the self, when they move you away from the truth, that can create disease in the future, because in essence, kind of the fundamental premise of disease is we are separating ourselves from our authentic selves and from our power. That is the essence of like the energetics, the spiritual, emotional component of what disease is. And you'll see this because what happens to someone at the very end stages of this, like they are disabled, they become dependent on other people just for their own physical survival. They are powerless. So the essence of healing is the reclamation of that power. So I'd imagine for about half the people watching, that just went straight over your head. You just have to trust what I'm saying, go and do the emotional work. For the other 50% of people, you're probably like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. I can see that now. So, okay, so now you have evidence. You have to go do the emotional work. Either way, you have to do it. There is not a single person on earth that doesn't have trauma. If you have a chronic health problem, and if you have it as severe as I did, so if you are dealing with, generally you can kind of measure by the magnitude of what's going on. So if the foods that you're eating have been restricted down to like 15 foods or less, there's definitely a trauma component. You need to work on that emotional root cause. If you have at least 3 fairly severe chronic health problems, like an autoimmune condition, chronic fatigue syndrome, and some type of severe digestive issue, there is definitely an emotional root cause as well. I don't actually expect you to believe me, because if I'd said this advice to myself when I was at the beginning of my healing journey, I'd have just been like, what's this guy talking about? Like, I don't care. You know, give me the science. This is, oh, I have physical gas in my stomach. It's a physical problem. Like, I totally get it. I don't expect you to believe me. That doesn't mean I'm not right. It doesn't mean I'm not right. And I know I'm right because of experience, personal experience. And as I've said, working with like 1,000 people, when you're at this more extreme end, there is always an emotional root cause. Just a matter of being able to find it and figure out what is an effective way for you to work on it. Practically, what does that look like? Well, I find for most people, when you're at the point where trauma or emotional root cause or whatever it is has manifested so deeply that is affecting the physicality, that is manifesting as physical disease, in the physical body, working with a modality that's orientated on the physical body can be really helpful. So something like somatic experiencing, so some of these more somatic orientated therapies, just doing like talk therapy or CBT, probably not really going to help you that much. Reason being, problem isn't so much up here, it's in the body now. The level where the dysfunction or where that emotion has pushed or suppressed itself is in the physical tissue, and that's where we have to work. So you can talk and talk and talk about all of the bad things that happened to you and how your mum did this and how your dad did that and this traumatic experience. You don't heal that much by talking about things. It doesn't really help. Now again, talking from experience, I've talked about a lot of my problems, doesn't really make them go away, doesn't really fix them. What you need is to complete that experience. The trauma creates basically this uncompleted experience. You've got this thing that happened to you and you never found resolution for it. You need to find resolution. You need to, and this is a really nice parallel when you're looking at gut health, and this parallel is 100% accurate. You need to take that experience that happened to you, you need to break it down, digest it, absorb it, and extract the nutrients, the wisdom from that experience. And if you've got a lot of things that you haven't been able to break down, digest, and absorb, you bet your digestive system doesn't work very well. And you've got IBS, and you've got chronic bloating, and you've got reflux, and you've got all of these things because you can't digest your experience. Again, not fully expecting you to believe me, because if I'd have told myself this 5 or 6 years ago, I'd have been like, what is this guy talking about? This is complete rubbish. But it's true. So take it or leave it. It's up to you. It's your healing journey. So to summarize today's video, 5 most common healing mistakes are: 1, approaching healing in a way that makes it very difficult to understand cause and effect. Throwing 50 different supplements in at a time. We don't know whether this one helped, whether this one hurt. Don't make this mistake. Do things in a very calculated and methodical way so that you can figure out what's helping and at what dose it's helping and what's hurting, and approach it as a scientific experiment if you really want to make sustainable progress. 2nd, following the hype. Doing what everybody is doing taking the cleanses, doing the detoxes, doing what everybody else is talking about. You need to ground yourself in your body's wisdom. You need to trust yourself and trust your own judgment. Don't jump on the hype train. Try to figure out where are these dysfunctions and address them appropriately. Ground yourself, understand the dysfunction, build your protocol around that dysfunction. Don't follow the hype. Third, detoxing in the wrong order. Detoxing is not supposed to make you feel absolutely terrible. If it is doing that, you are probably doing it wrong. You need to do it in the right order. We need to get your bowels moving as a priority. Then we need to work on your microbiome, not by killing it, but by nourishing it, by feeding it, by restoring it. Primarily focus on lactobacillus, bifidobacterium, akkermansia, and fecalibacteria. Those are the big four. There are a lot of other microbes. There's a lot of other stuff. We know more about space than we do about the microbiome. So we hardly know anything, but these four, in my experience, tend to be really important. And then get the bile flowing. The best way we can do that is to consume dietary fat. There's a lot of other fancy things we can do. Just do the boring one. The boring one works really well. 4, killing too soon. Killing can be appropriate contextually. It is the absolute last thing that I would recommend with regards to microbiome interventions. So before you kill anything, make sure that you have those 4. Make sure that you have provided appropriate digestive support and that you're consuming a diet that you're actually able to break down, digest, and absorb. Make sure that you exhaust every other option before you do killing fast, because killing can make problems a lot worse. And I would really like to save you the bother. And 5, finally, neglecting the emotional root cause. This is one I really hope you just trust me on, because like I said, 5-6 years ago when I was starting my healing journey, I would have just said, I don't want to do it. It doesn't make sense. Can't understand it. Just trust me. Do it. Try and find a somatic experiencing practitioner. Try to find somebody that you can do more body-orientated therapies with. It doesn't have to be this. There's a lot of other things that you could do that could be helpful for you, but please do something, because if you do have a severe chronic health problem, that in itself is traumatic. And in my experience, every single person that has this very significant level of dysfunction has an emotional root cause that needs to be addressed. So please work on it so you can heal faster, so you can get back to living your life again. You can go on hikes, you can exercise, you can eat all of the food that you want. You have to keep in mind all of the things that you're doing this for, because when you realize that you're literally betting your life on what it is that you're doing, you will start to take this more seriously, because you are going to die one day. And I don't want you to spend your whole life in pain, in misery, with symptoms that are all solvable problems. So do take this really, really seriously. You do have a finite amount of time. I want you to really enjoy your time here on Earth. If I can do anything to help you, you're always welcome to reach out. Shoot me an email, support@williamdickinson.co.uk. And if you have any questions, or if you'd just like to share anything about this video that resonated with you, I would really love to hear it. I read every single comment. I don't always reply, but I read every single one. Leave me a comment below, and I hope you found it really helpful. Take care. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.